in the drafting of the Freedom Charter. And President van der Bellen, without dragging you into this matter, I was pleased to hear that the anti-apartheid movement in Austria strongly opposed apartheid. And that struggle that the anti-apartheid movement in Austria supported was anchored around support for the Freedom Charter, because the Freedom Charter aspirations were, we want democracy in South Africa, the people themselves must govern, we want the respect for human rights, and if the Democratic Party could take advice, it would know that what is going to be discussed at that dialogue is going to be, one, what is the human rights situation in South Africa today? Are we adhering to what we set out to do? The national dialogue will be looking at the governance of our country. It will be looking at the economic growth path that we want to adopt. It will be looking at all aspects of South African life, including cultural issues, sports issues, issues that have to do with science. And I can name them all so that I can whet their appetite, so that their tongues hang out and see that they are going to miss the biggest show in South Africa by defining themselves outside of the national dialogue. What a great pity. What a great pity for a party that says it represents 20 or so percent or 26% of the people of South Africa. They are depriving those that they seek to represent an opportunity to make an input into the future of the country. I'm not surprised to see former President Thabo Mbeki having written, I don't know, a 10-page letter or so about precisely this. Because he is also appalled, as many South Africans are appalled at the behavior of the Democratic Alliance, which, when we seek to impose good governance against one of their own, they now turn around and turn against the people of South Africa. It's the strangest behavior I've ever seen. And when they met, we thought that they were going to withdraw from the government of national unity. What do they come with? They come with saying, no, 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 no. We want to stay in the government of national unity, but we're boycotting the people of South Africa. What a contradiction. It makes no sense. So, national dialogue will go on. We are not going to turn back. Thank you very much.
That brings us to the conclusion of this media briefing. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. You may take leave of us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media. We may continue dialoguing amongst ourselves.
First Lady, also, we don't mind Mr. President, she'll join us now. Education and training through work-based learning will be signed by the Honourable Ministers. Thank you very much. You may exchange.
Well done.
The Honourable Minister and Deputy Minister will also sign the Memorandum of Understanding between the Government of the Republic of South Africa and the Government of the Republic of Austria on cooperation on consular affairs. Please have a seat, Honourable Ministers. Thank you very much, Honorable Ministers. You may return to your seats. We have come to the end of the signing ceremony. I would like to thank His Excellency President Ramaphosa and His Excellency President van der Bellen for presiding over this ceremony. And with the permission of Your Excellencies, I now hand over to Mr. Magwenya to facilitate the media briefing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Your Excellencies, Ministers present, officials, Directors Generals, ladies and gentlemen of the media, we will now commence with our media briefing. President Ramaphosa will kick us off, followed by President van der Bellen. Then we'll take 2 questions from each side, from Austria, 2 questions from the South African media contingent. Mr. President, over to you, sir.
Can you close that door? It's cold. Yeah, just hold the door. Thank you. There's a cold hurricane coming from that side. Sorry about that. See, we South Africans are not accustomed to cold breezes like you are. You grew up on the mountains. Your Excellency President Alexander van der Bellen, ministers on both sides, and deputy ministers and ambassadors, and senior officials of our 2 governments, and all of you members of the media. It's a real joy to see you all here. As you are all aware, Your Excellency, South Africa is today mourning the passing of our former Deputy President, David Mabuza, who was my Deputy President from 2018 to 2023, and before that as the Premier of one of our provinces, Mpumalanga. It is appropriate that we pay tribute to him on this occasion, both for his contribution in many, many ways to the development of our democracy and to the quest for peace and stability also on the African continent. He was deeply committed to the cause of the people of South Africa and to building bonds of friendship and cooperation with peoples from other countries around the world. I think it is appropriate, as this is the first formal official occasion that we have, that we should observe a moment of silence and his memory. Could we stand up just for a minute to observe a moment of silence? Thank you. Your Excellency, President, it's an honor to have you here, and I welcome you to South Africa. This is the first time that an Austrian head of state has visited democratic South Africa. In our official talks, we took the opportunity to thank the people of Austria for their support during our struggle for democracy. We believe that this solidarity that they pledged to the people of South Africa as they struggled against the evil system of apartheid has laid a firm basis for our bilateral cooperation. Your visit today marks a new chapter for the relations between Austria and South Africa as we seek to deepen investment and trade between our 2 countries. South Africa is Austria's largest trading partner on the African continent and accounts for almost a third of Austria's total exports to the African continent. More than a quarter of all African imports to Austria are from South Africa. We have acknowledged the presence of more than 70 Austrian companies with subsidiaries and agencies in South Africa. And later today, you and I will be participating in a high-level business forum that will explore numerous ways and avenues for deepening cooperation and bilateral investments and trade between our two countries. South Africa welcomes the Republic of Austria's ongoing commitment to our country's development and to our efforts to drive inclusive growth as well as job creation. Today, we have just witnessed the signing of the 2 memoranda of understanding. The first, as we had, is on cooperation in consular affairs, and the second on technical vocational education and work-based training. Work-based training, an area that your country has reached high levels of excellence in, which South Africa would like to learn from with regard to how you've been able to produce the skills that are needed for your own economy. You and I discussed the impact of geopolitical events around the world. We affirmed the importance of the multilateral system as we strive to realize a world free from war and conflict. We share the belief that the institutions of global governance, and particularly the United Nations, must be reformed to meet the challenges of the realities of the world that we live in today. We took this opportunity to discuss the theme we have chosen for South Africa's G20 presidency, which is solidarity, equality, and sustainability. And in our discussions, I found that this too has great resonance with what Australia stands for. It envisages a world order in which every person, every community, and every country has equal opportunity to make progress on meeting their national objectives and aspirations. From our discussions today, it is clear that this is an aspiration that Austria and South Africa share. Austria is a valued partner of South Africa. This state visit, in our view, will further deepen and solidify our long-standing cooperation and strengthen the ties that exist between our two peoples. So we therefore welcome you, and for the 3 days that you will be here, we hope that you will be able to enjoy what the best country in the world has to offer, which is South Africa. And so therefore, we welcome you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident Ramaphosa, Excellencies, meine Damen und Herren, zunächst einmal, soll ich warten vielleicht ein bisschen?
It's okay. Yeah, it's on now. Thank you.
Ja, okay. Zunächst einmal, sehr geehrter Herr Präsident, danke ich Ihnen ganz herzlich für die Einladung hierher nach Pretoria. Ich freue mich sehr, hier zu sein. Und es hat mir sehr leid getan, heute vom Ableben Ihres ehemaligen Vizepräsidenten zu hören. Dieser erste Staatsbesuch eines österreichischen Bundespräsidenten in Südafrika ist Ausdruck für das große Interesse, das unsere beiden Länder aneinander haben. Südafrika ist nicht nur ein wirtschaftliches Powerhouse in Afrika, es ist nicht nur ein geopolitisch wichtiger Player in Afrika und der Welt, und es ist nicht nur ein wichtiger Akteur im multilateralen Bereich, vor allem auch im Bereich der Abrüstung und Non-Proliferation, sondern Südafrika ist auch ein Vorbild durch seinen gewaltfreien, inklusiven Übergang zur Demokratie, zur sogenannten Regenbogennation, ein schöner Ausdruck, finde ich. Südafrika ist heute ein Role Model, nicht nur in Afrika, für Frieden und Stabilität. Deshalb, es mögen uns zwar unsere beiden Länder mehr als 8000 Kilometer trennen, doch was uns verbindet, überwindet solche Distanzen. Ich greife nur einige Beispiele exemplarisch heraus. Wirtschaft und Handel. Herr Präsident Ramaphosa hat ja schon einige Zahlen genannt. Es begleitet uns auch eine Wirtschaftsdelegation aus Österreich und wir werden heute Nachmittag gemeinsam das gemeinsame Wirtschaftsforum eröffnen. Und die hoffentlich zahlreichen Kontakte, die dort geknüpft werden, werden beitragen, Südafrika weiterhin zum wichtigsten Handelspartner Österreichs auf dem afrikanischen Kontinent zu machen. Es wurde schon erwähnt, dass 1/3 aller österreichischen Exporte auf den Kontinent hierher nach Südafrika gehen.
And a quarter of our imports from Africa come from South Africa. And just as important, if not more important, is that Austria is one of the top investors in South Africa. It's among the top 5 investors of the European Union, with an investment volume of about 700 million euros right now. And you mentioned, Honourable Presidents, that over 70 Austrian companies are currently in South Africa, and they create approximately 7,200 jobs here in South Africa. We experienced that yesterday when we visited the company Alpla, which is an Austrian company, a family-owned business from Vorarlberg, and now it is a global company with subsidiaries in virtually all important countries of this globe. And the Alpla investment here is the biggest single investment of an Austrian company in the whole of Africa. I'm not quite sure, but in sub-Saharan Africa, definitely. And it is has the first bottle-to-bottle recycling plant in Africa. I mention this because these projects don't only create direct jobs, but within the sphere of vocational training, they are important. And Alpla also trains young people, apprentices, that will be the skilled workforce of the next generation that will be creating the green transition. And this is an example of the cyclic economy. So economic interests are paired with ecological interests. We see that Austria and South Africa are active partners that are both interested in creating and shaping a good future, and the political relations of our two countries I would describe as excellent, not only, but because South Africa is chairing the G20 this year, and this just shows how important the stature of South Africa is. We briefly spoke about the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine, and the Austrian position in this regard is well known, and I don't think I need to add that through our geographical situation and the historical situation, our two countries represent different perspectives in this regard. And the nervousness that is caused by this war of aggression is greater in Europe than in South Africa. Austria and South Africa have got historical ties as well. In 1977, the anti-apartheid movement in Austria was founded that worked actively until 1993 against the apartheid regime that infringed upon human rights. And in 1993, this movement was dissolved voluntarily because the first free and democratic elections took place here. Another example of the fruitful relations between our two countries is the area of culture. It is no coincidence that Austria here in South Africa has its first cultural forum in sub-Saharan Africa. I think it was 2 years ago, 2023. And this is a hub for the arts for society and for education. And not our delegation does not only represent a business, but also culture and science, with representatives from some Austrian universities that already have great relations with South African universities. So we really try to have broad-based ties between our two countries, and this includes the two memorandums of understanding that we have just signed. Last but not least, Austria has been thriving with its tourism for the past years and decades, and tourism has contributed to other areas developing well as well. And in my valley of origin, existence would not have been possible without tourism. But we don't only receive tourists, we also like traveling, and also to South Africa. If I'm informed correctly, about 20,000 Austrians come here every year to South Africa, and not only enjoy the fauna and flora, but also the hospitality in this country. Besides the many Austrians that have chosen South Africa as their home, they contributed to the ties between our two countries. And to deepen the friendship between our two countries, I am really happy that I'm here, and I hope that we won't be here for the last time. And I would really greatly appreciate it, Honourable President. We've got a period of office that is still about the same length, and I hope that I will be able to welcome you in Austria. Thank you so much.
Two questions from the South African media. So we'll start with our visitors. Stefan, do you want to kick off? Thank you.
Good afternoon, President van der Bellen, President Ramaphosa. My question is for both of you. To you, the state visit is about strengthening economic ties and presenting the European Union as a trustworthy partner for the whole continent, actually. But Europe has lost significant ground in terms of investment in Africa, especially compared to countries like China. In your opinion, is Europe doing enough, or does it need to catch up regarding to this? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll take one more, Kaya. Right in front here.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Kylie Kumala here from SABC News. Just to the two presidents, you're meeting at a very critical time. You know, they call it a polycrisis, geopolitical tension. What does it mean for South Africa and Austria? You know, just in terms of deepening trade, among other things, especially in a very volatile environment with the sweeping tariffs and many other challenges. But also, Mr. President, you spoke about multilateralism, especially in this context, you know, and maybe just a brief one on BRICS, Mr. President, your expectations in Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaya. We'll start with President Ramaphosa and then President van der Bellen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to refer President van der Bellen to your very last remarks about the 20,000 Austrians who annually come here to South Africa, and those who come to make their homes in South Africa. That in many ways proves that South Africa is the most beautiful country in the world. That
Except Austria.
You You are so predictable because you say except Austria. Well, maybe we should agree that South Africa and Austria are the most beautiful countries in the world. Maybe that is a fair point to make. Is the EU, and I guess maybe individual countries in Europe doing enough to foster their relations with the African continent, in particular countries in Africa, on investment and trade? I would say that much more needs to be done. We did comment on this briefly with President van der Bellen, where Austria itself does need to extend its reach on the African continent and be able to extend its diplomatic and consular relations with many more countries on the African continent. And we would welcome that, because once that happens, it gives a great opportunity for trade and investment opportunities to be identified and to be realized. I do think that trade between the African continent and Europe needs to go beyond what happened in colonial times. In colonial times, it was Europe that saw the African continent as a place where they could extract as many resources, minerals, artifacts, and everything else, and spread their own culture on the African continent. And I'd like to turn the tables around and say, this is the time where mutual beneficial intent needs to come into its own, where we need to cooperate on an equal basis and not even begin to go to those colonial times, and say that Europe needs to look at Africa as a continent of great opportunity, a continent which has sovereign states that Europe can deal with on an equal basis, where there can be mutual beneficial advancement that is required. And because most of Europe really made the great leaps of advancement due to the extraction of resources from the African continent, I do believe that it behoves on Europe to now participate in the process of development on the African continent and have a similar enthusiasm that I guess they had in the past, but this time to invest, to trade, and to develop the African continent in a number of new exciting areas. For instance, in infrastructure, in energy and renewable energies, and in critical minerals, and to do that on a mutually beneficial point of view, making sure that as they seek to have access to our great endowment, which is minerals, they ensure that we actually work together to beneficiate those minerals at source, to benefit the countries where those minerals exist, and also to move towards greater other areas, for instance, food security. Africa is a continent with great fertile lands and which can feed the world, and to work together to enhance the food security of both Africa and Europe as well. So there are many areas in which we can cooperate, and would like to invite European countries, and in this instance Austria, to see itself as playing a key role in the mutual advancement. And we, in doing so, will want to rely on the adherence of the values and the principles that are espoused in the United Nations Charter, the respect for the sovereignty of countries, but we also want to focus on the security of countries, and we want to be very clear in standing against conflict and war and working together to advance peace in the world. And we see Austria as a reliable and dependable partner in fostering peace and the end of conflicts in the world, working through the United Nations and other multilateral bodies as well, as we advance the interests of peace and security in the world. With regard to BRICS, we will be proceeding to the BRICS summit in Brazil tomorrow morning, and we obviously hope that BRICS countries will be able to reflect on the geopolitical situation that is unfolding in the world and be able to add its voice to fostering peace and security and calling for the end of all conflicts that are raging around the world at the moment, be they in the Sudan, be they in the Middle East, between Israel and Gaza, between Israel and Iran, be they between Russia and Ukraine. We do want to see peace installed in all these areas and to end the wanton destruction of the lives of ordinary people, as well as the destruction of the infrastructure that supports the livelihoods of people around the world. So we stand for peace, and we are glad that in Austria we have a partner who shares that same value as we do. And BRICS has always advocated for the end of conflicts, and we will be putting that message through as well. Thank you.
President van der Bellen.
Beantworten.
I would say the following. In some things, China has a strategic advantage. They are not aligned to short-term electoral goals. They don't have 27 member countries, so it is a totally different way of taking decisions. China was quicker in Africa than the European Union. Yes, there are certain indications of this. Careful about a general description of the situation, but you need to specify what is the union in this case. There are initiatives by the union, that is the European Commission, and initiatives by possibly 27 member states. And a very superficial glance shows already the Francophone zone in the past. Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso is also Francophone, and they are also characterized by coups d'etats and by an alienation from the former colonial power of France. In the former Portuguese colonies, Mozambique in the east and Angola in the west, I've got the impression it is sort of a frictionless togetherness. In Austria, we don't have any colonial history in Africa. Possibly this is tied to the disadvantage that we don't have automatic contact to the African to the African continent, sort of from the past. You can argue whether this is good or not, but contacts are Sometimes contacts are positive and sometimes it's a burden from the past. If we think that the EU overall is too slow in Africa, then it is high time that we change that. They are our next door neighbors. And other than that,
I was in Sharm el-Sheikh 2 years ago, I think that was. And I could see how much preparation that needs. And I was in Poland before that. It's really a challenge, you know. And whether that will be solved in Belém in time, we don't know. Personally, I do not know. And I mean, it is an important conference. But if the infrastructure there is not sufficient, we hesitate to go there, in spite of the importance of the conference, because, I mean, should I go there and be criticized afterwards that I spent so many CO2 going there and sleeping in the open? I'm exaggerating, but that's the problem.
Well, that's why you should always come here for summits. We won't make you sleep in the open.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. We'll take the second and last round of questions. Pule, do you want to kick off? No, Pule. Yes, Pule.
President Ramaphosa, Puleli Treaty from ENCA. Just on local matters, issues of the national dialogue, the DA withdrawing from that. Just your comment on this. What do you have to say about this? We saw a scathing letter from the former president, Thabo Mbeki, as well about this. Just your reaction on this, President. Thank you.
Thank you, Pule. Second, last question, Stefan. We'll come to you now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Stefan Bosmann, Austrian Press Agency. Mr. President, we still recall your encounter with Mr. Trump in the Oval Office, and many people around the world consider you a hero now. Still, the fight for truth doesn't seem to be over. Just today, the Freedom Party in Austria, which is the most voted party in Austria, publicly asked your counterpart, Mr. van der Bellen, to address the, I quote, precarious human rights situation in South Africa, and saying, I quote, that the white farmers, since the end of the apartheid, experienced systematic persecution, expropriation, and brutal murders. I understand that this is a state visit, but if this is true, it has to be addressed, and if this is not true, even more so. So, your comment, please.
You don't have a question for President van der Bellen?
He can comment it as well.
Okay, we'll start with President van der Bellen this time around, and then President Ramaphosa will wrap up the session.
I didn't check the news today. I just noticed they said something. Was haben Sie genau gefragt, die FPÖler, oder behauptet?
Die FPÖler haben Sie aufgerufen, die prekäre Menschenrechtssituation in Südafrika anzusprechen, weil dort wie Präsident Donald Trump gesagt hat, weiße Farmer seit am Ende der Apartheid verfolgt werden, enteignet werden und auch brutal ermordet werden. Das sollen Sie gegenüber den Amtskollegen ansprechen.
Ja, wir haben das besprochen.
yes, we discussed that is absolute nonsense. If you could please communicate that to the colleagues from the Freedom Party.
Go ahead. Well, President van der Bellen, I have always known that you would be a great ally and a great friend, and you've answered the question for me. And from your lips has come what I see as a great answer to this accusation that there is human rights abuses in South Africa and genocide. It is, in the end, the fiction of those people who would want to paint our country or put our country in bad light. And there is just no truth whatsoever that there is genocide in South Africa. And I did make an important seminal point during that encounter at the White House. I did say that we are Nelson Mandela's children, all of us currently living in South Africa. And we were well tutored by the great Nelson Mandela and the leaders that really gave birth to this democracy that we all now enjoy. He led us wisely and in a very clear and direct way to respect the human rights of all South Africans. And he led us to draft a constitution that continues to be the centerpiece of our existence as South Africans. Everybody subscribes to that constitution that has really solidified our position when it comes to human rights. In a country where there were no human rights, there was no respect whatsoever for the human rights of the majority population in our country. We were led by the great Nelson Mandela and his fellow leaders to adopt that constitution. And we continue to abide by the tenets of that constitution and respect the human rights of all, and also promote the notion that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, whether they be black or white. And it can never be, ever be, that in South Africa we will ever countenance a situation where one group will be persecuted, will be subjected to genocidal actions by the state. That will never be, it will never happen in South Africa. So it is a fiction of people's minds. It does not exist. And thank you, President van der Bellen, for dismissing it as nonsense, because it is nonsense. Coming back to Pule's question, I heard very clearly on the second part, the dialogue, but you had asked the prior question, which was?
With the DA saying that they will no longer be participating in the national dialogue, just your view on that, Mr. President?
Well, it is most unfortunate that a party which is a party to the Government of National Unity, which when we signed on to set up the Government of National Unity, we all said we support national dialogue. Every party signed to that. And it is rather surprising to hear a leader of the Democratic Alliance saying they never agreed to that in the first place. That is the worst form of hypocrisy that I've ever had. You sign on to a document and thereafter, for completely different reasons that have to do with governance in the Government of National Unity, you then lash out against precisely the same issue that you signed on for and agreed to. But it also really represents the poverty of good principles, where a party that stands for inclusivity and democracy in South Africa then goes against what the people of South Africa have said they wanted. People of South Africa said they wanted a national dialogue, and that is what we're responding to. It's not only the foundations, it's also the churches, it's also ordinary people in our country who said 30 years down the line, we would like to have a dialogue. We would like to see where South Africa is headed to. And this is precisely what we are responding to. And we believe that the people of South Africa need to be given an opportunity to dialogue with each other. And this is not a party political platform. It's a platform that will see the participation of the people of South Africa as a whole, sitting together. And political parties will play a very minimal role, or more or less the same role as any other, a soccer team, delegation, or a cultural delegation. All of us will play the same role. So it really is a poverty of adherence to good principles for a party to walk away from the people of South Africa, because this is precisely walking away from the people of South Africa and defining yourself outside what the people of South Africa are embracing. What is wrong with the dialogue? Nothing is wrong with the dialogue. It's about people getting together. So what I can say is that the national dialogue will continue without the participation of the Democratic Alliance. And we will probably have a very, very successful dialogue without diversionary inputs or interference from a party that does not have the interests of South Africans at heart. So we, together with all other people in South Africa, will be party to that. We went through a dialogue, a very overarching dialogue, when we drafted our constitution. The constitution that we have today is an outcome of a dialogue. It was broad-based. It was, in the end, the inputs of the people of South Africa that resulted in the constitution that we have. Now, to have those who want to boycott an overarching national manifestation like what we had when we drafted our constitution comes as a real shock to me. Earlier in the 50s, we had another dialogue which resulted in the drafting of the Freedom Charter. The Freedom Charter, which today is formed the foundation of our constitution. Freedom Charter was drafted by the people of South Africa, of course. The then National Party and those who supported apartheid did not participate. But those who wanted to see a better South Africa participated in the drafting of the Freedom Charter. And President van der Bellen, without dragging you into this matter, I was pleased to hear that the anti-apartheid movement in Austria strongly opposed apartheid. And that struggle that the anti-apartheid movement in Austria supported was anchored around support for the Freedom Charter, because the Freedom Charter aspirations were, we want democracy in South Africa, the people themselves must govern, we want the respect for human rights. And if the Democratic Party could take advice, it would know that what is going to be discussed at that dialogue is going to be, one, what is the human rights situation in South Africa today? Are we adhering to what we set out to do? The national dialogue will be looking at the governance of our country. It will be looking at the economic growth path that we want to adopt. It will be looking at all aspects of South African life, including cultural issues, sports issues, issues that have to do with science. And I can name them all so that I can whet their appetite, so that their tongues hang out and see that they are going to miss the biggest show in South Africa by defining themselves outside of the national dialogue. What a great pity. What a great pity for a party that says it represents 20 or so percent or 26% of the people of South Africa. They are depriving those that they seek to represent an opportunity to make an input into the future of the country. I'm not surprised to see former President Thabo Mbeki having written, I don't know, a 10-page letter or so about precisely this. Because he is also appalled, as many South Africans are appalled at the behavior of the Democratic Alliance, which, when we seek to impose good governance against one of their own, they now turn around and turn against the people of South Africa. It's the strangest behavior I've ever seen. And when they met, we thought that they were going to withdraw from the government of national unity. What do they come with? They come with saying, no, 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 no. We want to stay in the government of national unity, but we're boycotting the people of South Africa. What a contradiction. It makes no sense. So, national dialogue will go on. We are not going to turn back. Thank you very much.
That brings us to the conclusion of this media briefing. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. You may take leave of us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media. We may continue dialoguing amongst ourselves.
First Lady, Mr. President, she'll join us then.